Okay, fast. Okay. No, wonderful. Welcome to the Institute for the Danube region in Central Europe. My name is Sebastian Schäffer. I'm the director of this wonderful institution here, and I would like to welcome you to our special book presentation tonight. Today we explore a pivotal yet often overlooked chapter of the 20th century history, US President Woodrow Wilson's role in the dissolution of Austria-Hungary and the reshaping of Central Europe. Kurt Bednar's new book, The Irony of Fate, Wilson in Austria challenges conventional narratives by highlighting how Wilson's policies accelerated the empire's collapse and influenced its post-war fate. Kurt Bednar is a historian living in Vienna, and his prior books, Papierkrieg and Transatlantic Relations, stem from deep US archive work leading to this focused Wilson study. Our format is straightforward. We'll have Kurt presenting key ideas from his book, and then I will pose a series of targeted questions to dive a bit deeper, and afterwards we'll open the floor for questions if there are any. Please hold your applause for this dedicated Q&A. Kurt, thank you very much for being with us, choosing IDM for presenting your book, and the floor is yours.
Thank you. If you look at the book around this room, you might notice that there is a development in those books from Papierkrieg to the Routledge book. It's getting thinner. So maybe you have the opinion that the author has less and less to say. I hope not. Yesterday, a friend of mine asked me when the current war will end. And I stared at him, and I realized he meant the Iran war. But then I realized, or I recalled, there's another war going on in the Ukraine. And if you consider the time frame for the ongoing Ukraine war, it's 4 years and 1 month. And the First World War, and the book deals with issues in the First World War, lasted 4 years and 3 months. So that leads us back to why we deal with this. Another friend, you cannot have enough friends. And another friend, when I invited him to come, he replied to the title and said, Harold. And I thought, okay, well, it could be Harold, but it is, of course, Woodrow Wilson, not Harold Wilson from the United Kingdom. And that also what happens every day. When I got home last night, I saw a man in the U-Bahn train with a rucksack with Wilson on it. It's not about tennis rackets either, it's about Woodrow Wilson. And it's also interesting, if you look at the title, The Irony of Fate, although this title has a double meaning. First of all, it is a quote from Wilson. And he said, at the beginning of his administration in 1913, it would be the irony of fate if my administration had to deal chiefly with foreign affairs. And indeed, that was his fate. He had to deal with foreign affairs mainly, at least from the European point of view. And it also, the double meaning is that Wilson had an influence on Austria's fate. So this is also a double meaning for this, why I chose the title. Woodrow is missing, it's not Harold. Also, there's a specific reason why we are here today. Would like to add. When I visited Busek 1 week before he died, and in going, he said to me in Viennese, ich bewundere dich, dass du das tust. I admire you that you do this. And that was in 2021, I think.
If it was the year he died was 22.
Yeah, it wasn't in February 2022 then. And whenever I had problems continuing the work on this book, as well as whenever I had problems with finding a publisher, I thought of this, what Erhard told me. Talking about the publisher told me that this book, if you purchase it today, it's 40% off. So just in case you would like to contribute to the author's wealth. I would like to present this book shortly, 10 minutes, something like that, and then Sebastian is kind enough to ask me questions. The book consists of 3 parts, and the 3 parts are the facts, as much as history can be sure about them. We know since 2016 there are alternative facts. So I mean, I think a remark that we should add. The part 2 deals with the laws as within the law of nations at the time of the facts. And again, the law of nations has become in disrepute recently because some people think that the law of nations is of no relevance anymore. And that is, of course, another maybe parallel to earlier times. And part 3, the myths, how they were born and what they meant. And here I have to admit to a silly mistake, because the part 3 starts with myth number 2. You might wonder where number 1 escaped into. The problem is, I asked a colleague from the Czech Republic to write one short article on the myth number 1, and it didn't materialize. So all of a sudden, don't be bothered. It starts with serious number 2. I would like to go into 3 of the facts shortly, of course. Number 1 is the 14 points. I mean, everybody, of course, knows the 14 points. And what's the remarkable thing about the 14 points is, of course, that they are from Woodrow Wilson, but that the number 10 Wilson mentioned has an ambivalent wording. It says the countries of the monarchy should get not independence, autonomy. It said it's autonomy and not independence. And the wording is the nationalities of Austria-Hungary, whose survival existence we want to blah blah blah. So it's a grammatical question. Is it whose referred to the nations or to Austria-Hungary? So what does Wilson really intend to maintain, Austria-Hungary or the nationalities? It's an interesting discussion because there has been a book published in 2021, I think, and the author still keeps the ambivalence. He doesn't decide which version of the wording of point 10 he favors. Fact number 4 is the Masaryk-Wilson summit. Okay, we know who Wilson is now. It's not Harold, it's Woodrow. Masaryk is also well known in Vienna. There is a bust of Thomas Masaryk in the big hall in the University of Vienna. If you go to the big inner yard, I think on the right-hand side, there's a big bust of Thomas Masaryk, although he has nothing to do with the University of Vienna. It's another story covered in the first in the paper. Masaryk was in the United States at this time in June 1918. He came from Russia, where he met the Czech Legion people, whether the Czech soldiers or exiliants that were living in Russia. And they built the Czech Legion. They were mainly occupied defending the Trans-Siberian Railway, actually. So Masaryk visited the Czech Legion and then from Vladivostok transferred to California, and from California he traveled through America, the United States of America. The US had this time, millions of immigrants from the Austrian monarchy, including hundreds of thousands of immigrants of Czech origin. So Chicago was a big meeting point for the Czechs. So he ended up in Washington, of course, where the White House is, and he met Wilson in June 1918. The problem is Wilson didn't listen to what Masaryk told him. Masaryk argued, help us dissolve the Austrian monarchy. And Wilson wanted to hear what Masaryk learned in Russia, because at that time, you remember, there were two revolutions in Russia in 1917, the civil revolution and the Marxist revolution. So nobody knew what the Marxists were doing. So Wilson wanted to know what the Marxists were doing, and Masaryk wanted to ask Wilson, please help us dissolve the monarchy. Number 6 is the moment when Beneš, who Edward Beneš was, on February 6, 1919, at the Paris Peace Conference, he proposed a corridor, widely forgotten nowadays. If we talk about corridor, it's Danzig. No, forget Danzig. It's the corridor, the Burgenland corridor. Beneš proposed there's a corridor between Czechoslovakia and Yugoslavia, because you have to separate the enemies, right? Austria and Hungary. Well, this was the high point of his of the wishes he brought to Paris. As we know, the corridor in Burgenland materialized. Then we have in part 2 the laws. The 1 point, the recognition, and I think this is very important because you will probably ask me about alternative scenarios. Okay, and the recognition of Czechoslovakia by France and United States and England, okay, is understandable because they were Entente and they were the enemies from 1914. But how about the United States? But which motive did the United States have to recognize a government for Czechoslovakia? So this was a moment where it became all a bit shaky, the whole European situation. We are talking September 3, 1918. And the issue is a legal issue because the law of nation has 3 points. If they are fulfilled, you can legally speak of a state, of a recognizable state. And that's the population, that's the power, and that's the territory. But the territory, of course, there was no territory of Czechoslovakia on September 3, 1918. There was the territory of the monarchy, but there was no territory of Czechoslovakia. The military was in Russia, the Czech Legion, I just mentioned 5 minutes ago. And the government was not in Czechoslovakia. The government was, Beneš was in Paris, where he administered the Czech National Council in exile, and Masaryk was in America. So there was a quote, a joke in America saying, this is not a government, this is a government in US, the troops are in Russia, and so you can recognize it. But anyway, it was recognized. And then, of course, the armistice and the Austrian, well, I think I do suffer. I suffer always when it's called the end of the First World War. It was not on November 11. It was on November 3, November 3rd. So, and it happens that the armistice of the Austrians had to conclude was with Italy. Had the armistice not been concluded with Italy, maybe South Tyrol would have suffered another fate, because the Italians occupied Innsbruck, and that was a fait accompli, because the Italians were not going to leave from there. And lastly, of part 3, the myth of an issue that haunts us up to, until today, national self-determination. It was not a creation of Wilson, actually. Mr. Lenin, he discovered there as a good idea, a national self-determination. His idea was, of course, to show how decrepit then capitalism is, all those secret treaties, etc. So the Bolsheviks published all the secret treaties, and they said, okay, we favor national self-determination, Finns, Baltics, etc. But of course, the national self-determination in Austria-Hungary was a deadly weapon for the Czechs, the Slovenes, the Slovaks, the Croatians, etc., etc. So if you look at the map, for example, you see what we're talking about. And of course, and that is end of my part now. Yeah. If you look at this book, you see not only the picture of Woodrow, but also a map, and you can tell from both maps, wow, a lot of things happened the last 120 years. The borders are somehow similar. The Danube is still flowing, but it's a completely different scenario, is it? I mean, if you look at Montenegro or Bosnia, some people in this audience have been to Bosnia in October last year, and did we see anything in Bosnia which is Yugoslav? Is it Austrian? Is it international? Is it Muslim? Is it not Muslim? Nothing changed in the last 120 years. And thank you for the first part.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Well, I hope a little bit it changed over the past 120 years. Maybe not so much in the region, although I have to say, I mean, the IDM started out with 8 countries when it was founded in 1953. Now we have 19. We did not expand our geography or anything. It's the same space that we are talking about. But exactly, there's a couple of new countries that came up. But well, we go back more earlier. What you mentioned also, what I still would like to add, because you drew this analogy of how long the First World War went and how long this full-scale invasion in Ukraine is ongoing. If we look at, because just a couple of days ago there was the anniversary of the occupation of Crimea. If we take this as a starting point, this is the longest war in Europe for centuries, and this is really because it's going on for 14 years plus, 12 years plus. Still, hopefully not 14, but well, it's a different story. As you mentioned, the one question I'm going to ask, so I'm going to start with this because I think it's something that I find always interesting when we look back at history as a political scientist, what could have been alternative scenarios that you mentioned. And my first question then would be, was there really an alternative scenario, like a reformed monarchy or an economic federation or whatever would have been there? Is that something?
Yeah, sure. It's keeping me thinking for I don't know how many years, of course. And I don't support the monarchy idea. I think the monarchy idea was dead in a long time. But the economic structure, as you mentioned, it's a shame that this economic construction didn't survive. I mean, the peace treaties contained a 5-year period where the countries, especially Hungary, Czechoslovakia, and Austria, could have a duty-free, custom-free area, but nobody wanted to work together. So it was there was a chance for 5 years to rebuild an economic construction. No, it didn't work because mainly the Czechs didn't want that. So there are alternative scenarios in many ways, and the book goes into some details what could have happened. There are some people and some people ask me, okay, this one, and what's spectacular about it, right? So this book is basically the product of additional research I've done in Berkeley, Stanford, and in some American university libraries, which about documents that haven't been available to me beforehand, and widely forgotten because nobody cares about persons like Kerner or Osuski or Heron or other people that and they were talking about, for example, Heron. He was having peace talks. Lamache, maybe some people know Lamache. Lamache was an Austrian jurist, and he met Mr. Heron in Geneva to talk about peace. Nowadays we know, okay, Heron didn't have the capacity and the authority to talk about peace, but it was one of the last chances in the spring of 1918 to get peace. And as soon as you get separate peace with Austria, you have a chance to maintain the structure of Austria or Austria-Hungary. But the main thing and the main argument is, and this is in extenso treated with, is the month of October 1918. Well, starting with the recognition, which I think was against the law of nations at this time, but the October 1918 was the key month of all these developments. Why? Because Austria finally descended and asked for peace, sued for peace, beginning of October, like Germany did. Okay, and who was the addressee of these peace proposals? Wilson, our guy in Washington, Woodrow Wilson. And Woodrow Wilson answered the Germans in a positive way. He said, okay, let's talk about the peace treaty. But he did not answer in the same way to Vienna. So he said, as I said earlier, that point number 10 in Wilson's 14 points, Wilson answered, okay, autonomy is not an issue anymore. Now we're talking about independence. And you don't talk with me about independence of your nationalities, you talk to the nationalities. That was a very important point that entitled the Czechs and all the others to talk about their way. And then, of course, this is partly known, but totally undiscussed, not treated with in historiography, is a meeting in Geneva at the end of October, beginning of November, with the Czechs, the Czech exile from Paris, coming from Paris, and the Czech party representatives from Prague met in Geneva. And of course, what happened? I mean, basically, it's clear. Benes came from Paris, said, forget it, I made it all, just sign up. It's what I discussed, or Masaryk discussed with Wilson, it's all fine, don't think about it. But Kramar from Prague said, well, wait a minute, what are you talking about? What will you sign up here? So, and on the way to Geneva, Kramar stopped in Vienna. He talked to the emperor and said, what am I going to say in Geneva? Okay, but there are no records. And the problem is that the records about Geneva internal meeting of the Czechs is in Czech, of course. So this book was published in 2017. The other one was in 22. That means 5 years difference. This is in 2026. It's 4 years difference. So expect the book in 2029, 3 years. Until then, I have to find somebody that speaks Czech.
Thank you. I would follow up briefly on this because I'm wondering. I mean, we just published at IDM scenarios on the Hungarian election. It will take place in about a month. And we were trying to really look at what are scenarios that are embedded in the Constitution, and we're looking at facts and try to not write alternative facts. But if you write scenarios and think about what potentially could have been, we come from alternative facts maybe to alternative history. So how difficult is it to steer this thin red line before you veer into something that is rather historic science fiction?
Well, if you this was my personal path, so to speak. If you look at 1993, all of a sudden Czechoslovakia breaks out. Okay. Two parts, Slovakia and the Czech Republic. Slovakia and the Czech Republic. But there was further down in history, there was also the breakup of Czechoslovakia by Mr. Adolf, because the Carpato Ukraine fell apart, which is even yeah. So Czechoslovakia in after the First World War was much longer. So it was a Carpato Ukraine, and again this was decided actually in America under Wilson's eyes, because there was a strong Ruthenian community, Ukrainian community in America, and they said, "What are we going to do? We have been part of Hungary. Hungary. We're part of Hungary. Do we stay with Hungary? Do we go with? Do we stay independent? Do we join Czechoslovakia?" Okay, and the Ukrainians in America decided, okay, we go along with Czechoslovakia. The Slovaks were not really asked. They were, it's a different story, but they kept their anger that they didn't get independence in 1919 until 1983. And then it's finally they separated from Czechoslovakia. It was a development for God grief, for 80 years. I mean, those they kept it in their national memory. So, and the other, we don't talk about Yugoslavia, maybe we could talk about hours about Yugoslavia. But that's just a peaceful dissolution of Czechoslovakia. We know that the Yugoslav dissolution was not at all peaceful. Does it somehow answer?
Yeah. No, absolutely. And it definitely involves some sort of, we need to have some sort of imagination, and there might need to be some speculation also into this. But I imagine it's not so easy to look at facts and then also incorporate that in possible other scenarios. I find it difficult to do that. But maybe if we go back to actual facts, you argue that Wilson's decision shaped Austria-Hungary's demise beyond just internal factors. And what's your strongest piece of evidence for this?
Well, that leads us probably to present day politics somehow, maybe. Wilson didn't know anything about Central Europe. First thing to bet. Why should he? I mean, we didn't care about America. America didn't care about Central Europe. But then all of a sudden there was a war, right? And Wilson said to his people, "Keep out of the war. This is a European war. We don't want a war in our country. Although, especially because we have so many immigrants from the European countries, we don't want the clashes in the United States. We got to keep the war in Europe." So, but in 1917, the pressure was probably too strong and joined the European powers in the First World War. So, what are we going to do with peace? There will be some peace eventually, right? So he set up, and this is a big story in the first book, the inquiry. He asked his aide, Colonel House, "Please help me. We don't know anything about." I mean, it's a good deed, right? I mean, could have said, "To hell with it," or like the British said, "Sorry, where the hell is Session?" They didn't know, and they just rolled over. But Wilson said, "Okay, well, let's find out about these things in Europe." And they built up the inquiry. There was an official organization, 140 at the best time. They had 140 historians, whatever, people working on all these things. But what did they do? They collected material. Where did they get it from? Masaryk. What do you think will Masaryk's material from Masaryk contain? Will it be a neutral observation about what the circumstances in Austria are? And that's a good thing in the consequences, a chapter about the Osuski and Herz discussion. Herz was an Austrian economist. Osuski was a Slavish historian, very young at the time. And they discussed about the future of the whole situation. and Hertz was arguing for an economic cooperation. That was the beginning of the discussion. I mean, it's really crazy. The monarchy went down, and then we have to find a replacement, right? Because somebody told me that has been something very 400 years built together, and we can destroy it, but it's destroyed now. What we're going to do? The Nubian Federation. Great idea.
Mm-hmm.
So that was the beginning also, once the monarchy was done, all the ideas about the Danubian Federation. But the Danubian Federation didn't work out up to today. We don't have it yet. And that's also maybe an idea what we can do out of this sad situation. Let's strengthen the European Union. Let's strengthen the European Union because we have a small European Union in the center of Central Europe, and let's bring this unity to the whole Europe. That's one of the points you mentioned. Hungary. I don't understand why Hungary doesn't follow this path, but it's another.
Yeah. But I would follow up here. I mean, you mentioned this fragmentation. So does Central Europe, does the Danube region have a future given today's fragmentation?
Yeah, well, Central Europe. I mean, okay, are we talking about Middle Europa or are we talking about Central Europe? Because Middle Europa is an infamous term because it was the title of a book by Friedrich Naumann in 1915, and this was why everybody talked about his book during the First World War. Said, okay, the Germans want to dominate Europe, and this is written in this book, Middle Europa. Okay, the Middle Europa concept was a German concept. We occupy whole Europe. Europe is ours. That I don't mean, okay? But Central Europe, thus, is a different issue, and I think it had a past since 1526, when those three areas went together: Austria, Hungary, and Bohemia, as it was called, Bohemia. By hereditary transfers. But anyway, 1526, we have the nucleus of this monarchy. So we had it, and we still have it in a way. I mean, talk about the economic situation nowadays. Since 1989, when the Iron Curtain came up, what did Austria do? Best thing ever. We reoccupied economically. We went to Prague, we went to Bratislava, we went to Budapest, and we invested. And there are big banks, big insurance companies, big other industrial companies in this area. They are owned by Austrian companies. It's a great success story. So it happens, and it will happen. Historians shouldn't talk about the future, as I said in the beginning. But I think it is possible, and thus we should do it. We should work on it. There's no alternative.
Very good. And another author that wrote about Middle Europa was actually Gerhard Husek. Huh?
Right.
Also a different concept than probably Norman. But now you mentioned you dig deep into archives and covered things in various places all over the US. Are there any gems that you can share with us that you uncovered and that where we need to rewrite history now?
Well, it would damage the world, or rewrite, but add to the
Okay.
A treasure point is the Library of Congress. I was there for many times, and it's very helpful people. A good friend of mine, Angela, hello, tremendous help. Then there are some universities in the eastern part of the United States, but there are also sources that are very difficult to uncover. And I mentioned the name Kerner earlier on. Robert Kerner, he was a German-sounding Czech propagandist, actually, with traces in Austria. He was involved in the Carinthian issue in 1919. The frontiers in Carinthia, difficult subject. But the Kerner papers and the American archives have many papers. So it's the Kerner family gives the papers to the university of so and so. So the first thing is to find out which university houses papers of this guy you go after. Okay, there are Kerner papers in Berkeley. Okay, so I wrote to them and I said, okay, I'm coming. I want to see the Kerner papers. Okay, yeah, there are Kerner papers in two parts: the correspondence, the personal correspondence, and the papers he wrote. So what I got when I was there last time was a personal correspondence, but it would take 3 or 4 days advance order that I get the other paper, which I didn't have the time. So there would be an opportunity for another trip to Berkeley, which of course is impossible for the next 3 years, right? So, I mean, from my point of view.
Yeah.
So, and of course, the other thing is the Czech archives, not necessarily in the US, but there are, as I said, there is a strong community, a Czech, a Slovak, and South Slav community in the United States, and they have their own archives. Nobody opens the archives in the National Czech Council in Chicago, for example.
Mm-hmm.
And the big man in Chicago was, besides Kerner, was Herbert Adolphus Pergler. Charles Pergler is also in one of those books. Charles Pergler, he collected lots of stuff, and Herbert Adolphus Miller, and that leads me endlessly. So I just want to we talked about the European Federation and stuff, the idea of what could be after Austria-Hungary. I mean, we talking about October 1918. At the very same time, when Wilson answered negatively to Austria, at the very same time, just picture that, very same time, there was a Middle European Union built up in Washington, in Philadelphia, actually, Liberty Bell and stuff, you know. So there's a picture, Masaryk signing up the big declaration of whatever independence of the Middle European Union. Big article in the Philadelphia, whatever, and the New York Times, of course. Wait a minute, was it Middle European Union, or did we destroy the Middle European Union we have, and we rebuilt the Middle European Union in Philadelphia and Washington? What's wrong? Well, wrong was that the people that invented this Middle European Union, that hardly any literature on that, they said, okay, we do that, but 2 countries were excluded. Just to give you the crazy idea behind these brains, Austria and Hungary. I mean, it was stupid. I mean, if you really want the European Union, look at the map. I mean, okay.
Thank you. So we can expect then, hopefully, in the next book, some more gems in this. Yeah. I will also open up for the audience, of course, if there are questions to the author. Please just raise your hand. I'm happily distributing the floor to you. But in the meantime, one more thing that I will, even if you say we shouldn't talk about, historians shouldn't talk about the future, but we can talk about the present. So what's one lesson from the time 1918, 1919 that you extensively looked at that policymakers in the Danube region should or must not ignore, let's say?
Wasn't that our Chancellor Bruno Kreisky that said to a journalist in Austria once, lernen Sie Geschichte, Herr Redakteur, an unfulfilled wish.
Yeah.
So learn history, or learn geography.
Yeah.
I mean, a big part of the inquiry I mentioned earlier was, as I said, 140 experts, historians, and geographers. I forgot the geographers. They had dozens of geographers working on that. Because, as I said, Czechoslovakia needs a territory, but the territory needs frontiers. Okay, every territory needs frontiers. Where does it begin? Where does it end? So where are the geographers? Well, there were some German or Austrian geographers, but they were not asked. So they asked the other geographers, and there were Swedish, was a Yugoslav geographer, very good geographer, no doubt about it, but he had his own ideas where the borders should be. Well, what was your question?
One thing that current policymakers should not ignore.
Yeah, geography and history.
Yeah.
I mean, if you do something, even in Yugoslavia, where you, Bosnia, I don't know. I mean, it's okay. It seems to be a historically founded frontier. But there have been discussions, as I remember correctly, in the 90s about between the Serbs and the Croats and the Bosniaks, where does our territory begin and where, so there are issues. So geography is an issue. Geography is a very important issue. It's very modern to talk about female input. There's a wonderful book about female geographers, their ideas, and I would like to name one person, the Ellen Semple Churchill. She was a geographer. She learned from Friedrich Ratzel. He was a German geographer, and she was part of the peace process in Paris. Unfortunately, her ideas didn't get through, but she was a good input from the female side and from the geographical side. Yes, we can learn geography, learn history.
Okay. Thank you. So, do we have some questions here? This is not, I have more, not a problem at all. That's fine. That one thing that you also mentioned already, and where you said like a reason why you probably will not be traveling to the US in the foreseeable future is rooted in the current administration, and there are. Is there really a possibility to draw some meaningful analogies between Wilson and his isolationists until that one of the main reasons was the sinking of the Lusitania back then that brought them into the war, but one of the let me phrase it differently. Is this isolationism that was there? This is not our war. Is that comparable to America First, especially given now that the peace president has started a couple of wars by now?
Up to 1917, America was not at war. So, and it's actually he got re-elected. Woodrow got re-elected in 1916. With the slogan, and American campaigns always have a slogan like "Hope and Change" or "Yes, we can." That's enough, or just you remember the fist of Mr. Donald. He didn't need to say anything. He just had to show the fist. And in this re-election campaign for Wilson in 1916, there was one sentence: "He kept us out of war." Half a year later, he was at war. Shows you how easy it goes. But you couldn't call it isolationism, I think, in the strictest sense. Whereas the current president certainly, I don't know. Nothing's certain with him.
Yeah, true.
Favors isolationism, being. I do it if that's called isolationism. But the real isolationism in America came afterwards. Wilson didn't succeed in making America part of the League of Nations. The Europeans could have thought that it wouldn't work because he was defeated in the congressional elections in 1918. The Democrats were defeated, so there was no chance to get it through the Senate. So, okay, so the no League of Nations, no peace treaty. The peace treaty with Austria and with Germany were concluded in 1921 only. So, but who succeeded? Who succeeded Wilson? Through isolationist and a corrupt politician, Harding. And he died, fortunately, early in his administration. He was succeeded by Coolidge. So there could be an analogy, maybe. I mean, I'm sorry to say, it's not very nice what I say, but having died in the middle of his administration, there's always hope, you know. That
I do. I think, I don't know. Yeah. If how to get out of this? I mean, the overall like America first idea that we're seeing now, and also maybe like the shattering of global orders that we of a global order where we don't know what will come next out of this. Maybe this is something, because I think one illusion will be that we will not be able to return to something that we had pre the full-scale invasion in Ukraine, but also pre the second Trump administration.
We shouldn't try to return to something. We should try to work on something new. Why I say that? There was no League of Nations before 1919, right? So there was the idea. The idea is brilliant, of course. I mean, I'm not totally blind to what Woodrow Wilson did, but his idea was like a Presbyterian. I mean, his family was not by preachers, were church people. So peace, right? So the idea is basically totally all right. League of Nations, and we discussed the conflicts, arbitration. Great, but all the time the period of arbitration before we shoot each other, we let some people in and let us explain what we could do to finish the conflict without shooting each other. So, of course, the League of Nations was actually defeated by the Europeans in 1936 when Italy occupied Abyssinia, and nobody did anything. So that was the death of the League of Nations. But what came afterwards? Okay, the United Nations organization. So right now we live through a period where we believe that the United Nations organization is going to die, probably, because nobody takes care of it. So what are we going to do next? But just to go back to UNO is also wrong, because we have seen the deficiencies of UNO, bureaucracy, I don't know what. So we should just proceed, and based on the experience in the League of Nations and the UNO, build something new.
Okay, very good. This is almost a very nice summary, but I have one last thing, because I mean, we're recording this. It will be available on our YouTube channel. We are streaming it into the world. So I would like to give you this opportunity. All the people out there that can't enjoy the 40% discount now when they go out, tell them the basic message and why they need to read this book.
Huh. But if there are people outside that read this one and this one, so now because we have to do this one. But if you didn't do this, then you maybe get a summary of all these ideas in this one, because with time ongoing, you tend to focus on the essentials, not blah blah blah, not narration and stuff. This is more or less the first was more or less the discovery area for me myself, because I totally new to me and it was very interesting. But this is more or less the basics, and the basic is it was not necessary. It always says the demise of Austria-Hungary was a fait accompli, and I strongly oppose this theory. In 1968, the Austrian historian Karl Stadler said, there's certainly no, he was writing in English, he said, there's certainly discussion about a that the Allies have been responsible for the demise of Austria-Hungary. And I read that 10 times. I said, what? 68? Prague Spring? Okay, maybe. Stadler was leaning towards communism. I found out in my research, Karl Stadler was with the other guy that comes on, right? So he was left wing. So maybe there was a connection why he did say that. And I worked on this and I said, no, that's wrong. It was not a fait accompli. The victors made it a fait accompli. And then after a fait accompli is here, so what do? You kill the rabbit and then you have a dead rabbit. What do you do with the dead rabbit? The question is also, why is historiography still very reluctant to deal with it? Well, why? Because the historiography says 4 empires died in the First World War. Okay, Russian Empire. Is that a Russian Empire? There is one, right?
At the moment, I could,
Turkey.
well, it is imperialist Russia. Yeah.
Turkey is not has not disappeared. The German Empire survived, but according to historiography, they died. Okay, and then the fourth one, Austria-Hungary, they really died. So I mean, and the argument is they had already been dead when they arrived in Paris. So, so okay.
Thank you very much. Big round of applause again.
It was not Harold, it was Woodrow. You went.
I have a question which is not related to Mr. Wilson, but what you mentioned was about the economical structure, which might have been a glue. So this complex area would somehow stay combined. And so I'm asking myself, or I remember that some structures, I think, have survived for quite a long time. Yeah? I don't speak about Lieferketten, which always, I think, have existed. But I remember the Donaudampfschifffahrtsgesellschaft. The Donaudampfschifffahrtsgesellschaft was, I think I'm right, the biggest, I don't know the English word, Binnenschifffahrtsgesellschaft in the world. And they owned coal mines in everywhere in the monarchy. That was a very, very big enterprise. And they existed, I think, even after 1980. And I had an uncle, he worked all his life as I don't know the English word, as an Abwickler. I still don't know exactly what that means. But there was the DOSAG, the Donau-Sade Adria. And this Gesellschaft owned a lot of property, especially in the south. Yeah, so in Austria, the Yugoslavian countries, and in Italy. And his job all his life was to divide these things and to negotiate, this is ours and this is ours and how much is it worth, but all his life. Yeah. And he died, he retired in the 80s, and he still working.
Is there still a question coming though? Is there a question?
No. My question is, to what extent did other structures like this survive, and why couldn't they prevail?
But they survived for a while. I mean, Julius Mandel was all over Eastern Europe. Okay, and the other companies like Schicht, the soap thing, Schicht company was all over Eastern Europe, but they did not survive. They didn't survive somehow, and then it's, as I said, it's a revival now. I mean, Julius Mandel is maybe active again. I don't know. We have so many companies now that have gone to this area, and I hope that they stay and that they develop. But it's a clear sign that there is an economic area that grows together, that fits together, that is Central Europe. like Institut für den Donauraum und Mitteleuropa, IDM. It's a perfect slogan. We are in the right road here.
The national idea was much stronger than the economy.
Yes, the nationalism nationalism was stronger than the that's a problem with the current situation, that many people think that we should try the national path again and protect us against what comes in from other areas, etc. And we know that's the wrong idea, but there's hope that we learn from the lesson. Or we should work on this. That it's the wrong path to tell them. Make Europe great again.
It's funny coincidence. Last week we were in Budapest at the conference presenting the final results of a project which is called Central Europe and Future EU Enlargement. And the title that we chose for this presentation was "Make Europe Greater Again," referring to we should finally enlarge the European Union again. And this is really a thing that drives us. The challenge that we see is that especially Central European countries, not only, but especially Central European countries, are very skeptical towards enlargement. So granting the ones who are still not in yet the same possibility that they had and have used tremendously. If we look at the success stories, we don't talk about the success stories enough, I think, here. Poland now is one of the 20 biggest economies in the world.
Yeah, good example.
And this is not due to Polish nationalism. This is due to Polish Central Europeanism integrating into.
But you have to tell them sometimes.
I think we need to tell this to each other much more, and hopefully books like yours can contribute to this discussion. So one more time, if there is not another question, comment, no. One more time, thank you very much. Good for this. From our side here at IDM, I have to say thank you that you chose us to do this. I need to say thank you to Sophia Beiter, who helped setting up this event, but especially also to Ilaria, who is managing the technical stuff in the back. Thank you very much for staying longer and helping us implement that. So a big round of applause for them. And yeah, I think in 2029 you said expect the next one. So I hope we meet each other before, but yeah, save the dates. 2029 we meet again here. But for now, I heard there's wine provided by the publisher and snacks provided by the Bednar family. So enjoy that, but be quick. There's a lot more people that have not registered that we didn't expect. So great that we have such a huge crowd. Enjoy that. And if you are interested in everything in Central Europe, maybe also follow the activities of IDM and what we are doing. Subscribe to our newsletter or have a look at our website, idm.at. Thank you very much. Yeah, until next time.